Welcome to Afterthoughts, everybody. This is our Recommend or Refute episode where we go around the table and we talk about things that we would recommend that you spend your time with, or we tell you, no, don't do that. Stay away from that. It's going to waste your time. I'm your host, John Garcia. With me is our co-host, as always, is Ryan King.
Hey, John, I heard you're back off the wagon and you're not sticking with your only watching good movies.
I think that was just for a week. I think I said I was doing that for a week. That was just 1 week of sobriety.
It was Lent.
Yeah. Look, I bought a sobriety chip off of eBay for a year, so I think I've done my time. The other voices that you've heard are our guests returning from our previous Venture Bros episode. That is Jimmy Sparks and Erika Winters.
Yes. Hello, audience.
Welcome. And we will kick things off by kicking it to a seasoned veteran of family films, Ryan King. Ryan, what do you got for us this episode?
Yes. As usual, I'm bringing a family film or an animated film or a family animated film. That is what
they call it. Family.
Most of my time. Yeah. We skipped at the movie theater, but now it's come out on streaming. Watched Ruby Gillman's Teenage Kraken.
I'm just Ruby Gillman, normal teenager.
For generations, Krakens have protected the seas, keeping us safe from the most power-hungry and dangerous creature of all.
The mermaid?
Yes, the mermaid! Ugh.
But people love mermaids.
I love you so much! Love you too, Rando!
Of course they do. People are stupid.
I'm Chelsea.
Mermaids are selfish, vain narcissists.
I am gorgeous.
Yes, queen. The worst of them all.
What's happening?
Excuse me. Hey, are you okay? I know your secret. You're a kraken hiding as a human. And soon, everyone will know the truth. Cushions.
Are you ready for your destiny?
I just want to live my life.
You have powers beyond your imagination. This is your moment, Ruby.
I'm not gonna hide anymore. You're just a dumb teenager.
It's time to go big.
I still have to think about it. I'm getting to that old man point where the other day I was talking about it and I was like, Ruby Kraken Teenage Gillman. Like, I can't even get it.
We watched the Kraken movie, son.
My life
They
as a teenage Gillman.
Yes. Ruby Kraken is a great movie title.
Terry Gilliam's teenage...
Terry Gilliam's Kraken. Now I'm in. I'm sold. My daughter was interested in seeing this in the theater along with Elementals. And we didn't watch either of those in the theater, to her disappointment. She's young enough to not realize that they came out in the theaters, but old enough to see on streaming when they show up. So we decided that was going to be our Friday movie last week, just out of I'll give it a shot and see what DreamWorks has up their sleeve this time. And it did not perform well in the theater. Animation is kind of in a weird spot where Mario did really well and Spider-Man did really well, but Disney has kind of failed. And they can't make up their mind whether something comes out to streaming or comes out to the theaters. And DreamWorks also is kind of floundering in a weird way on what they think is good and what they don't want to follow on. They did a lot of marketing for Ruby Gillman. And I'm going to say, I guess I'll just say, I'm going to refute it. Not out of it's bad, but more out of it
could have been better.
Or kind of boring. Yeah, there just really wasn't anything for me to latch onto to be like, oh man, this hit some high highs or did something interesting or the animation went here or any of those things I could kind of point to. DreamWorks Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is way fucking better than it should be by a significant degree. So I know that they have a nose for really, even for something that shouldn't be anything, doing something good, and then to have a whole new property and kind of just, I feel like, phone it in, kind of. Honestly, the plot is they're Krakens and they're pretending to be humans. We don't exactly know why.
We've all been there, folks.
Yeah, you've been there. Our main character, Ruby Gillman, falls into the water, and it turns out she's a giant Kraken which it doesn't really explain, is somehow different from regular Krakens. Mermaids are evil, and she fights with a mermaid.
Sure.
That's
Is
pretty
it like
much
a
it.
puberty
honestly,
thing, like analogy?
Yes, it really heavily is like ha ha ha, Little Mermaid, wink wink, quite a bit.
Yeah.
That's one of the derivative pieces. The other is it feels like a bit like Luca with the sort of like, oh, we live in the water and now we're pretending to be humans, and it's funny that we have to pretend to be Canadian in order to trick the humans into not recognizing we're blue with no noses. But that works. That's good enough. It went exactly where you would think it would go, and it didn't really do anything. The characters, there really wasn't anything beyond like any characterization for anyone but Ruby and maybe her mom, and everyone else kind of is just like a joke that they go back to. Will Forte plays a pirate that once saw a Kraken back in the day, and is still like, he's going around and giving tours to people in the town and just going off on like Krakens and other shit instead of doing the tour that he's supposed to be doing. And then once he actually sees a Kraken, he goes nuts and shares it on social media. And that was great. That was entertaining. And I could have seen a whole lot more of that movie and less of what I actually watched. Yeah. So I think this is one where like I walked away being like, yeah, it was fine, but there's not going to be a sequel to this. And I don't care. And if there was a sequel, I really wouldn't watch
There's
it all.
not
I would
gonna be
not
a
tell my kids it
Ruby
existed.
College Kraken, you think?
Yeah, probably.
But what was daughter's opinion?
Yeah, what was your daughter's opinion?
Yeah.
Did she want to watch it immediately again?
My kids are entertained by anything.
Mm-hmm.
He's
If
raised
this
them with good
podcast
taste.
has shown any history, all of my family but me is entertained by just about anything. So yeah, no, I think she enjoyed it, and I think that the sort of like it hits those sort of notes of like, oh, you're up and coming as a teenager, you feel out of place, kind of hitting the same notes of like, oh, you're gonna go to prom. What does that mean? Oh, your mom doesn't want you to do the things that she did when she was younger. Just the kind of same beats that we see in movies. That's where I was like, I don't think it really hit anything that was like a new concept or explored it in really a new way. So yeah, my family was like, yeah, that was fine, but I think they'll probably forget about it. It's one of those, I feel like if I asked later, they'd be like, yeah, I kind of remember watching that, but I don't remember exactly what it was about.
I see. So it wasn't better at its job than Turning Red.
Yeah, also it has a lot of Turning Red, right? Because there is that whole, they hide from her that she's gonna turn into a giant Kraken, and her mom turns into a giant Kraken, and her grandma turns into a giant Kraken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah,
it's
I was a little
weird
curious
how derivative it was of several other movies.
Yeah, because like I believe in like the advertising, like you see the grandma and you see Ruby and a couple other characters, but like I was kind of confused as to why there was no mom. I was like, I guess she just doesn't have one or something. Maybe I don't know, but yeah, so that is interesting that it ended up just being like, oh no,
They just cut it from the trailer.
just
Yeah.
this is just Brave again,
Yeah.
except
the
instead of
big
being
reveal.
a bear, she's a Kraken.
I kind of thought from the trailer like all Krakens were cool, but apparently they're all actually pretty
Hashtag
shitty.
not all Krakens, Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Only a few Krakens are giant Krakens, and the mermaids are way more powerful, and the rest of the Krakens we don't even really see. They just, they're people-sized, and they swim around and don't appear to do anything.
Huh.
I don't like that there wasn't any world building. That was one of my other
I was going to
pet
ask.
peeves. Yeah, if we're going to introduce a whole, like, oh, there's Krakens and there's mermaids, I needed more of, like, how does this work? And
Not
what is
just
their
their street
relationship to
gangs.
humans? Yeah, I need some more, like, snapping.
I thought the thing that it was gonna try to do uniquely is the like dynamic between like two friends that ultimately being on different teams kind of thing.
Yeah.
Amidst this like teenage growing up.
Yeah, it pretty much blows that wad right out the gate, though.
Really? I thought it was
Again,
gonna
where
be
it's
like,
like, yeah,
a
there's this,
cool-
there's the new girl that turns out to be a mermaid, but it tells you right off the bat that that's the case
Mhm.
in an absolutely mirrored Little Mermaid way, in where Ruby Gillman saves a guy but runs off because she doesn't want him to see that she's a Kraken, and the mermaid girl shows up and he thinks that she's the one who saved him. Like, again, it's like, okay, cute,
Cool.
Uh-huh.
right? Like, okay, I guess, but not enough to be anything like super interesting with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a little bit of like, oh, we're friends, but you as a, the irony is the home audience is like, yeah, she's gonna fuck you over. The mermaids are gonna fuck you over. Like, we just know that from the get go,
Yeah.
and there's not really any built-in thing where you're like,
Bummer.
actually think it's going to be different,
Well-
mainly because there's no antagonist,
Really?
right? Other than
Oh, so
this
it's just
person has to
aimless?
turn out to be evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
I feel like
I
if you end
see.
up having like a secret evil person, which is like every Pixar movie
Yeah.
Yeah.
as of late, you have to have someone else who seems like an antagonist
Yeah.
or is also an
the
antagonist,
red
and then we
herring.
have an
Yeah.
even bigger one.
Haha, get it?
But you
'Cause
can't
she's
have
a-
like no antagonists and then spring a secret antagonist on.
Yeah.
That kind of sucks. I was actually interested to see if it was going to be a movie about like the perils of like female friendship in high school between the popular girl and the not popular girl. That's like a pretty like common like
Yeah, that's a
That
trope
would be
that you could
interesting.
explore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
no.
that would be
Yeah.
interesting.
damn
Yeah, no.
refuted. Boom.
Refuted hard. There you go, everybody.
Did it at least like look good? Like
Yeah, did it look like $1 million or like 300 million?
Yeah. How many millions of dollars?
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's how worthy it is, right?
Like $1 million. There wasn't really anything that was super interesting animation wise.
Mm.
This was a movie where I got distracted thinking about the realities of how things work to really pay attention to what the hell was going on.
That means the
Wow.
animation never
Honest.
mesmerized you once.
Yeah, right.
Yes, yeah.
That
I
was
was sitting
just
there trying to
colors on the
figure out like
screen.
how there was a giant kraken walking around that no one saw because quote mist, I guess, was covering things enough and shit like that. Like,
Yes, missed.
and then the like,
Salty
what do they
sea.
eat? Like, how do they? Yeah, I got lost on thoughts
With
like
their
that,
beaks,
so that's not a
silly.
good sign.
Yeah. Nom, 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 nom.
Oh man. Well, we've got one refute down so far. Erika,
Sure.
what are you bringing to the table?
Sure. So from what I understand, this is actually a replay for this show, but I'm bringing Nimona.
Once upon a time in a fairy tale kingdom. Oh.
Tweet, tweet, tweet.
Oh, what a peculiar bird you are. Now go make me a dress. Make your own dress.
This is the part where you run.
I'm on fire! I'm on fire! No, not humanity! Who would do such a thing? That would be me.
Who are you?
The name's Nimona. Your sidekick has arrived.
I don't need a sight.
Every villain needs a sidekick.
I'm not a villain.
Yes. So we recently saw Nimona after it released on streaming. And I'm going to recommend it. I'm not refuting, I'm recommending it.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've seen an animated movie, like a 3D animated movie, just because aside from like Mario and Spider-Verse, because there really just hasn't been much coming out that looks
And Puss in
interesting.
Boots.
Yeah, on Puss in Boots, yeah. But like, that's 3 out of whatever, just because it feels like in general they're not telling they're not telling very interesting stories or
anymore.
anything.
You don't want to see Trolls World Tour or whatever? the
Yeah,
fuck's coming
whatever.
out? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, he's my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Let me dance and sing. Or the one where all the animals dance and sing.
Or the other one where they all
like,
dance and sing.
Yeah. Or where the little corn nuggets scream incessantly. Yeah. I don't know. Not super. So, yeah. So, it really caught my eye visually. That's just what drew me to it. At first, because I like the new direction of animated movies that they're kind of hearkening, to more 2D textures, like very much like when Arcane came out and told people like, hey, you can still paint and like make things look really cool with your textures, but still have it 3D animated, and people are like, whoa, now everyone's trying to do it.
Yeah.
Which is good, great. So Nimona is the story of a I've already forgotten all of their names. So we will be aside from
Golden
Nimona,
Loin.
We got one.
Golden Loin, yeah.
Golden Loin is a great name.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's your main guy character, and he is essentially the equivalent of a gutter rat in this cool, like, not cyberpunk, but it's a techno medieval style
Kind of an interesting mismatch.
Yeah, it's an interesting mismatch.
It's a punk of some sort.
It's a medieval punk, perhaps.
Medi-punk.
It's a yes. So he is like essentially a gutter rat, kind of just normal guy, and he wants to become a protector of the realm, which is in this world a kind of lineage only thing. And he's one of the very first people to get the honor of actually going to the academy and becoming a normal person protector. And it's a huge deal. And then on the day that he's going to be knighted, there's the queen is assassinated, and now he has to go on the run because everyone thinks he does it.
Oh.
And while he's on the run, also trying to figure out who did this, he meets Nimona, who thinks he's actually the mastermind and wants to become his sidekick. And then starts their adventures trying to figure out who did this. And Nimona teaches main character guy about, almost the own way that his society has blinded him to the almost like a racism kind of,
like an oppressive system.
An oppressive
somewhere in
system,
there?
yeah. So in this story, it's very much like a race allegory as well as like a trans
like class.
More
class
class
system.
systems
Yeah.
than race.
There's a lot, honestly. It does have like a couple like, pinpoints on like, this is about gender or this is about, class or, but it's as a broad, like, just like about people who grow up in different places and you see them as monsters because you're taught that they are. And yeah, so I definitely recommend it because I think that it's great fun. It's very funny. It is paced pretty well. Like it always feels like it's moving. And it looks pretty good. It's got a great visual panache. It was inspired or from a comic. So it uses a lot of that in its visual storytelling. I do think they changed the character models a little bit to give them kind of like cuter looking like eyes and stuff, but like whatever, they animate well. So
Yeah.
And I think that the story it tells is good. There's a lot of like great representation where it doesn't try to like point at the fact that like the main character is gay. It's just he's got a boyfriend. And then Nimona is like very clearly like, I'm Nimona and I'm not always a girl. I'm not always a boy. Sometimes I'm a shark and sometimes I'm a bear and sometimes a whale. And it has a lot of interesting dark themes that I feel are represented well. And that makes it just a unique, kind of like, family oriented film to watch. I think that the one negative thing about it is that eventually, from what I understand, it was in production and then it was dropped. And then Annapurna caught it and said, okay, don't worry, we've got you. And because of that, I don't know if this is true. It just feels like there might have been some changes made to it where like there were some musical choices that felt like they might have had licensed music previously. And they might have had to swap some out. So it kind of didn't feel like, it just felt like a weird choice to have in
just
there.
Like the energy of the music that's backing it?
Yeah, it didn't feel, just had a weird like,
there's like a particular scene where like the Nimona and the like main character guy are like dancing and like doing this like kind of
and the
thing,
song
and the song just doesn't match.
Doesn't
at
feel
all.
like it would have
He's
been
like
what
air
Nimona
guitaring and there's no guitar in the song.
Yeah, so that's really weird. And then there's like toward the end they take from the boring tropes of, hey, this is a buddy cop movie, so they have to have the moment where they get into a fight and then they have to go and be in a fight mode, for a while, which is very boring.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, so it does like a Marvel thing at the end where it's like big bad fight, or
there is a big bad fight at the end,
okay.
yes, but yeah. So it's I don't
There's
know.
a little bit of the what was the fucking, now I'm forgetting, Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi? Oh yeah,
Shang-Chi, where it's like there's a dragon fight at the end.
Dragon?
Yeah, we're like, oh, we were doing really fun enjoying this movie and now we have to have a dragon because we have to fight something
exactly.
big.
Yeah, it's very much like now it's time for the big bad monster, and it's because of a misunderstanding that you would think that due to the events of the entire movie it wouldn't be a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it doesn't earn this at all. Like it totally fucking face falls in the second half, where it's
bummer.
just like, damn, dude, like this was actually going to be a movie where it wasn't going to be like, because the guy stands up for her at multiple points, and you're like, oh wow, he's actually like on her side. He's a real friend. And then it's like the same fucking like, you think I'm a monster? And he's like, well, aren't you a monster?
I
and
see,
it's just
yeah.
like, but he spent the
that's
whole
enough, yeah.
time like
Yeah.
calling her not a monster. And it's
They
so
become like
annoying.
so close of friends that this emotional break where there's like a trust that's kind
Yeah.
of shattered just doesn't feel
It
like
doesn't
it's
feel
earned.
real.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like he would never have done this, and he's previously done the exact opposite. And it's just so lame.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
immediately
lame.
think of like Wreck-It Ralph when you talk about that scene. Wreck-It Ralph has like such an emotionally racking moment of
Yeah.
that like trust, and it's
Yeah.
for good reason and is earned
Right.
in the
Yeah.
character. But yeah,
And then they
will
fuck
say
it up
that-
with a whole second movie.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
I will say that you're right on that being a fault with Nimona, because that kind of happens 3 times. Because I
Yeah.
would say
Yeah.
for the main male character, his significant other almost immediately is just like, oh, well, I guess you killed the queen. Like all of whatever history they had is thrown out the window
Yeah.
for him really quickly.
Yeah.
And then it all hinges off this misunderstanding in the past that also kind of is just like a little bit unearned, where it's kind of like, oh, I guess you are a monster, or I think you have to be a monster because my parents say you're a monster, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, the movie has some problems, but I think the best part about it is the titular character, who's just like a gremlin in
Yeah.
the best of ways.
Oh yeah, she's got total gremlin energy.
Yeah. The
I'm always
animation
down for
and
a
the
fun
voice
character.
acting for Nimona, I think, are the parts that I was like
That was
really
really
sold
wowed
on. Like
by.
really dynamic
Yeah.
animation, really great voice acting for that character. And yeah, just a breath of fresh air
Yeah.
in animation.
I
Just
like that they
something-
tried something different. Yeah.
I wanted more world building of the.
Me
Oh,
too.
yeah.
They
I
like.
wanted so much more world building.
Do we do spoilers? That's a recommend. Don't spoil it.
I think I spoiled
Yeah.
it previously too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
you probably
okay.
spoiled
Well,
it. Feel free to spoil
without
it.
spoiling
Okay.
too hard, there's
Yeah.
like a moment at the end where like they kind of open up the town or whatever, and like I wanted to know what was out there, and they just have like a.
It was just like a Windows XP background.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I feel
see.
like the world could have been bigger and more developed.
Yeah.
And because it was cool what they did have. So
Yeah.
Yeah. With kind of this core concept in it of like a classist system, a medieval classist system,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and this sort of oppressiveness of like a punk type of, corporation almost that Nimona feels like she's up against. And the fact that like they quote bring that down, but we like never really see it other than one bad person.
Yeah. They
Like,
what,
what's
like
the
they
effect
take
on
they take
everyone
down
else?
the
It's
statue
unaware.
or something,
Yeah.
right? And like that's all you see is like, oh, we've taken down the statue, but it's like what what actually has changed or anything.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then I do think that too with the ending, it really is like that last like it really like the last half an hour, which is pretty bizarre because it's like the movie's not too long, but it's just like the whole half an hour is condensed with shit. There's like, it does that thing where there's like a heroic sacrifice, and it's like personally I think it's bullshit. It's like,
Mm.
like you didn't. I don't feel like this was deserved. Like this doesn't feel bad. I don't feel bad for anything that's happening right here because like you guys fucked yourself into this stupid situation because you didn't say the right words and you shouldn't have said those words in the first place. So meh.
Yeah, I could see that being. It sounds like the animation and the voice acting is really what carries it all the
Yeah.
way through. Like
Has
even
a
for the
ton of
story's
heart.
failings, it's got a lot of heart behind that, as opposed to Terry Gilliam's Teenage Kraken or whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah. I'm curious to know if it like ends the same way as the comic. I think the comic's done, so it's not like they were, doing a manga adaptation where they had to fucking come up with their own shit.
They just
but
guessed or
they
something.
just guessed, approximated an ending. So I'd be curious to know if like it was the same ending or not, or if there was
I don't
more.
think so.
No.
Yeah, I've been intending to read it, and I have glanced through, and it's like the same concepts, but a departure,
Okay.
if that makes sense. And I think it's where it's like, okay, we had to make a movie, like come up
Yeah.
with something that was like a full, like this is the movie and this is the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the characters are the names are there and kind of what the characterizations are, but some of the events and how the things happen are kind of a little bit different. I do think the ending is like something else entirely.
I'm kind of in favor of that when it comes to adaptations. That means there's more to love.
It should be something,
so
right? Something needs to be,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, it's a glowing review for watching the first hour of Nimona and then quickly transitioning to the comic.
Yeah. Stop
Do a
reading
hot
the
swap right
Do
in
a
the
hot
middle of
swap
it.
right then. So I believe our next is
It's me.
John's
I'm
very
doing
exciting.
It. Yay. I am here to talk about, look, okay, I did good movies for a week. I was a good boy. The rest of my life is dedicated to living in a trash bin.
Like a raccoon.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So some buddies of mine texted me on Sunday and were like, you want to do a remote movie night with us? It's been a while. And I was like, sure. And they're like, what's the terrible movie we're going to watch? The first movie we watched was Cleopatra, Queen of Sex, which they did not like. They had a terrible time with it. I had a great time watching them be traumatized by it. But that's not the movie that I'm going to talk about. The movie I talk about is the redemption movie that I picked, which is this 1978 movie called The Bees. They're massing by the millions. No mind can withstand the awesome power of bees.
There's been a mutation, a new strain, and well, it's out of control.
Panic grips the earth.
Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Open my eyes!
This is an ultimatum. Either we share this world with them, or we vanish as a species. Would you mind? You're not listening to me.
Now you leave them no choice.
Is there an exclamation point after this?
No,
or?
there's not an exclamation point after it, but the poster is of a giant bee mouth and a woman running furiously away from it as though the bee was going to eat her.
I now know what type of movie this is. Okay.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
bees do
now
not-
I've got a better view of what's going on here.
It stars John Saxon. If you don't know John Saxon, then you just don't know 70s movies from a B category.
Oh, the B category?
Yeah, which
the
B?
Exactly. My friends and I made B movie and
Yes.
B puns all throughout it.
Good.
The premise is basically that there is like a corporate smuggling ring in South America that's trying to get
Bees?
these like super good honeybees out of this super dope plot of land. But the guy
Africanized bees?
the guy who breaks into it, actually, he accidentally breaks into the wrong enclosure. It's for the killer bees. It's such an easy mistake to make.
Yeah.
They're right next to each other.
Of course.
He immediately, like, him and his son try to break in, and then immediately they're just like, oh, God, bees. And they just start running.
I didn't expect these here.
Yeah. And so begins the rest of the movie, which is just, how do we get people to open things that have bees in them? And it's like, every plot point in this movie, there's like 3 different threads going. John Saxon is a scientist. He's a biologist.
A beeologist. Okay.
He's trying to figure out how to stop these bees from coming to America. So he's like talking with the UN in what's clearly a Hyatt hotel room. And the UN is like, they have a jar of those bees there. And then suddenly this old man just knocks that jar off. And suddenly, oh God, there's bees in the UN. and like every other sequence is like, oh, well, the big parade's tomorrow. Do we have the bee float going? And suddenly it's like, oh shit, bees. So
are they in the parade?
What is the connective tissue between these?
The connective
bees?
tissue is that
Honey.
there's a woman who is on the plot of land that was the bee farm that was harvesting these bees with her husband. Her husband is killed in a house fire that the bees start.
Wait.
Technically, the bees use an angry mob of people who are all out for blood after they blamed the death of that man and boy on the bee farmers and not the bees that the man and boy tried to steal. So they're like, we hate that you have bees in our country. Fuck you. And they just light his house on fire and kill this old man. And then his wife like flees to New York, meets John Saxon. That's where those threads intertwine. The third thread is the most interesting for me. They have an uncle in the picture of this. He's the old man who knocked the bees off in the UN. And his name is Uncle Ziggy. Uncle Ziggy is, I think, post-war Nazi Grandpa Joe of this movie. Like, Grandpa Joe from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka is the main villain of that movie, as we all know. I think Uncle Ziggy is also the main villain of this movie, as he continues to do research on bees, and he has a profound amount of knowledge about all of these bees and how they communicate. He teaches everybody. This movie's full of all that the actual bee movie schlocky shit where they just stop the movie to tell you sciencey things to make it sound more grounded.
Talk.
He's like, observe how the bees that dance. Look at them, they're communicating. And they're like, Uncle Ziggy, you so wacky. Why don't you knock into the jar of bees over? So they basically have this whole moment where for the first hour of the movie, it's what can we do to get bees hurting people? Like, and there's crazy stunts in it. Woman's riding a horse at the equestrian track and, oh God, bees. And she falls off the horse and the horse like almost steps all over her. And it's like, Jesus. And then other people are like driving cars and suddenly the bees get in the car and they're like, fuck, no, not the, and the car just like crashes and almost burns. Like, yeah, it explodes. Just gas canisters, man on fire comes out. He's like, ah,
bees.
Yeah, just bees. So it's like an hour of that exploitation. And it's kind of amazing how many ways people can find bees in their things.
It's like anthrax.
To the point where they gave up and there's an old man in a park who's like, hey, you kids, you want $5? Can you catch a bee in a bag for me? My knee's got the arthritis. If I get a bee to sting it, it'll feel better.
What?
And then from there, the boys go and catch the bee, but they also throw a rock at the beehive they get the bees from. So they're just like, suddenly the bees are fucking everybody up in the park too.
They're very angry.
The best part of this movie is, I'm just going to spoil it for everybody here because it's absurd no matter what when you watch it. John Saxon and his love interest, who is the woman from the bee farm.
Isn't she an old lady?
She's a young lady. She just had an old man for a husband, like a very
typical.
old man.
Gotcha.
Yeah. They fall in love.
It's the 70s.
Because they fall in love
All
because
that bee
he knows
money.
a lot about bees and she knows a lot about bees. And they're both trying to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes this like climate change thing where they're like, you fucked the world up, everybody. And the bees are angry with you. And we need to stop the bees. And they're like, but we're going to work on a plan later. We're going to go sleep right now. And they like go lay in their bed together. And then the bees come and wake them up. And then suddenly the doors open, like the bees are opening the doors for them. And they lead them into the lab. And the bees are like, and John Saxon's like, we're trying to learn your language. We can't quite understand you yet, but we know you're intelligent. And the bees are like, and they like lead them to the UN, a bigger UN that's in a bigger Hyatt hotel. And John Saxon just goes up to a podium and he goes, the bees are very angry with all of you. They've told us this. If you don't stop what you're doing, the bees will have to kill everybody.
Facts.
We need to learn. He was like, there's 70 trillion of them in the entire world. We need to learn to live in harmony with the bees. The world is now 50% bees. And I'm like, that math doesn't add up at all. But okay. And then somebody just goes, you're fucking crazy. And suddenly the bees break a window and start killing everybody. And then the credits just roll. And it's like, that's just what the world is now. It's because humanity's hubris.
You have to respect the bees.
Yeah, it was, the more that I thought about it, the more trippy it got. And the more that Uncle Ziggy and I started to piece together through the story that Uncle Ziggy was a Nazi. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow, this adds so much depth to a movie I didn't think about it was going to be here. It's like nobody's even trying to ask Uncle Ziggy how he has all his scientific knowledge or if he had human experiments that he did with these bees.
With bees and humans.
Yeah, exactly. My friends really enjoyed it. They had a fun time with it. It was goofy. When it got to the science talk, it dulled down, obviously. It's hard not to when somebody's just
reading
yelling
the Wikipedia
at you.
page.
But John Saxon trying to communicate with bees and the amount of people that have to find bees and things, it's just great. It's just a fantastic time. So
what kind of bee effect work do we have here for a 70s movie?
So sometimes they had like real bees on certain people. Like even the actors wake up in like a room full of live bees and you can tell it's there. It's pretty intense. And I don't know how they like wrangle bees. So they just continue to do that. But anytime that the bees broke out into chaos and people had to run around,
were they like on little like wires?
It was like it was almost like they filled like a green screen room with asbestos and ran a fan and like then they just layered that over.
Put that over the camera.
And you can tell, especially when they zoom in on people that are running from the bees, the size of the bees in front of the camera does not change. So you're like, okay, I know what this is. At times it looks like Kix cereal too. It's like floating around.
I love it. That sounds great. I'm convinced.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a
Absolutely.
great date night movie.
Oh, yeah. But are you recommending or are you refuting?
I would recommend this, honestly. I came in here thinking I would refute it, but the more I think about it, the more insane stunts are propped up around bees. It's just so insane that somebody in some studio was like, you know what's fucking terrifying? These bees. You see these bees in the news? We need to fucking find some way to make this exciting.
Yeah. So for all the regular bees that were just in shots, they were just like honeybees?
Yeah, they're just really docile bees, and everybody's like trying to communicate in some way with them, or some people are just running away and they're doing nothing, or some people are just covered in them and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
The one thing I really wished was that there was at least more people firing guns at bees. I would have loved to have seen like police force being like, get them, boys.
Pull up a tank and they're like, yeah.
I can't hit him.
Bees like a Godzilla movie.
What I want to know is, would you rather learn about bees from Uncle Ziggy, or would you rather learn martial arts from Uncle Dave?
Oh, I'd rather learn it from Uncle Dave than Uncle Ziggy.
You want to kneel on the bricks?
Yeah, I'd kneel on the bricks. That's a Breathing Fire reference. That's a deep cut, Jimmy. You're just going to break out a Ke Huy Quan movie in the middle of this recommended review?
It seems you have to have a good uncle to be a good movie.
There really are a lot of brands that are propped up and stories propped up on the shoulders of uncles.
Yeah, exactly.
Being an uncle myself, I know this. I consider myself very important as an ancillary character to my brother's story. And my nephew's story too.
Becoming an uncle was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Uncle Ziggy's a Nazi, so I don't want to learn.
That's kind of what I was.
That's
the downside, right?
Pretty
it's
suspicious
like bricks
science
there.
Yeah. Anytime that we talked about Uncle Ziggy with my friends, when we were like, "Oh yeah, he really hates bees," and we put quotes around it.
Yes, the bees.
Yes. It's like Uncle Ziggy.
Oh.
What was the?
So yeah, the bees. I would recommend it. It's the dumbest bee movie I've seen about bees. So, yeah. Ryan, you saw this too, right?
Yeah, I've seen that. This is there are those special bee exploitation movies.
Exploitation.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the like the bee movie, that like late 70s time period where kind of they've run the course on everything you can do to be like, oh, the town is being attacked. What
The
science
teens aren't
is
scared of the
man-wrought?
swamp monsters anymore.
We've already had the birds.
Yeah.
What
Yes,
now?
yeah. And yeah, this falls in that special area, and I do like the trying different ways to make it look like bees are attacking people, because there's a mix of like I do like it when sometimes they'll have like bees and then they clearly have like a plexiglass, like they're in a box or plexiglass or something, and they're filming through that, so then people are like looking like they're, but it's like, no, this is not framed right.
Yeah, still doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a problem to solve. That's interesting.
Yeah, just anything to try to make it work. It probably still looks better than like digital bees would look today, though. You know, honestly.
Yeah.
Did they consult any beekeepers in the bees?
They didn't.
I think they had to have had beekeepers, because they.
If you're talking about
bring
the
in
movie
some-
story itself,
In the movie, were there only bee scientists?
well, like the main characters are all like, it's like the Justice League of bee people. They like all know everything about the bees at all times, and so they're constantly like, "We're running out of time. The bees are immigrating to America too fast.
They're coming on the jet stream."
Yeah. Like, my God, it's kind of amazing because like one of the main characters puts the bees in like a tackle box and carries it on a plane, and then when she gets to New York, she gets mugged in an elevator, and the muggers are like, "Yeah, we got it." Yeah, they're like, fucking pry it open, and then suddenly they're like, "Oh God, bees!" Just like, the amount of like times they set that shit up with these scientists being smart but also really stupid in what they keep the bees in.
I can't believe that you
It's
came
like,
into
wow.
this thinking that you were going to refute this movie.
I honestly, yeah, I'm just as surprised as you are.
It would have been better if she had kept the bee in her purse.
Yeah, she honestly should have. But yeah, it's great. Fantastic movie. Well, there we go. We've got a refute, a recommend, and Jimmy, what are you bringing to this table?
I'm breaking the mold, John.
Oh
shit.
That's right. I'm not recommending or refuting something I've watched. I'm recommending or refuting something that is yet to be.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah. You know what? That was intentional for sure. The One Piece live action Netflix adaptation is coming out.
Well, fame, power. I found everything this world has to offer. Free yourselves. Take to the seas. My treasure is yours to find.
Why would anyone want to be a pirate? This is the best thing there is. Wind in your back. Salty sea air. A loyal crew by your side. It's ready!
What is it?
Or Jolly Roger. We are the Straw Hat crew. We're heading up to the Grand Line.
A treacherous stretch of ocean with bigger islands, bigger pirates.
And that's where we're gonna find the One Piece.
You've been making enemies everywhere we go.
It's a death!
Luffy, they are hunting you.
You.
I'm Monkey D. Luffy. And I'm gonna be king of the pirates.
In less than a month now, August 31st, and I am a huge One Piece fan. It's my favorite anime. And I've been wanting to talk to people about this and get like some eyes on this because anime game adaptations, they pretty much all go one way. It's really hard to adapt anything to live action that is so reliant on fantastical powers, or just cartooniness and, that sort of thing. So, this project kind of seems doomed to fail just in its premise, right? But I think the thing that like is really apparent behind this, and as like I've kind of followed like trailer releases and just like hearing what like the creator of the original manga has to say and what the people who are behind creating it is, the entire show is really, really made by people who care about One Piece. And I think that's something that's very different from a lot of what happens with especially high budget like game and anime adaptations, is they tend to get like Hollywood people or people that like, maybe in certain cases don't care at all and want to put their own spin on it and make it. I mean, look at The Witcher nowadays. It's kind of falling prey to straying from the source material, and this one you can just see the love in it. You can see, especially as a fan, you can tell like, oh wow, they're doing that, and they're including this, and they haven't like changed that. Like it has a high chances of being shit, like because of what it is. But I am so excited to be there and see what it. I have a lot of hope for it, and I think that it's going to be something special, regardless of if it ultimately turns out to be good. I think it'll be an interesting watch for sure.
I have similar feelings about, and I know it's not all of it's great, but the Cowboy Bebop live action was on track to be really good,
and then it
was
just nosedived.
Yeah, and it's still, there's like moments in it where you're like, all right, I like these parts, but if it didn't have the rest of this, then I would really like it all the more. And it's just one of those things where, One Piece 2 is an anime that's been going on, and a manga that's been going on for a really long time.
Forever.
How many episodes are there?
It's over 1,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But I was watching like some video essay. I think it's Mother's Basement did a video essay on it, and it was just like really solid on like why 1,000 episodes is actually reasonable for One Piece, and how there's like growth in the characters, and like the journey has milestones that just continue on, and doesn't need that finality of like we only did 3 seasons or something.
It's got such a narrative driven story because it's more an adventure serial than it is a action like battle. There are battles and stuff, but it's really more about the adventure and the characters. So it does have a natural like adaptation to like TV and live action from that standpoint, where an anime like Dragon Ball Z would never, because that's just guys standing around for a
Screaming at
while,
each other.
screaming at each other
Yeah.
and beating up on each other until the last punch lands, right? I'm sure you could find ways to adapt it, but I just think that it like translates a little bit better in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about this are you kind of the most excited for from like the things that you've seen? I mean, beyond like the creatives behind it and the actors, because like there's obviously a pony show that happens with any kind of series like this where they're like, let's get the actors in a chair and have them talk about how,
Yeah.
I read the manga and I really liked it. Or like,
There
oh, when I
has-
was a kid, I did this.
There
and I
has
really
been
dug it.
that, yeah.
Yeah. But like, what
Yeah.
are the other pieces that you're reaching towards that you're like, okay, it looks like they captured these parts. Like, what are you noticing as a fan of it?
So one thing is the creator has made some statements regarding like his experience like working with the show, and literally everything they do, every piece of the script that gets changed from the source or character decisions that they're doing as they adapt it goes through him. All the casting has gone through him, and that is something that's unique. But more than that, the set design is so cool. They are building all of the actual ships of all these different pirate crews, and they have some like crazy figureheads and like very unique, distinct designs. There's a big floating sea restaurant, and just if you look at the set, you're like, oh wow, the detail is here. And then just the most recent like full show trailer they showed, really, it astounded me how much of the show that they're going through and how accurate they're portraying just the story beats and everything's there. And there are some differences, like there's characters that they never showed up there, and that's kind of exciting. It's like, oh, how are they changing that up so that this character actually makes sense to be here? And in certain aspects it's like, oh, actually I can see why this character would be here, because like he is a kind of like a kingpin of this section of like the ocean, and of course he would know about this place and might even be there. And then I think that the other thing that I look at is like all of the dialogue that they do have in it feels on point for all the characters. It doesn't feel like anybody's saying things that character wouldn't say or anything like that. So I don't know. I think it's just got a lot of hope in me. You can't judge a show by a trailer. In fact, the first teaser they put out, I was like very mixed on.
Yeah.
But I think that it's they showed the execution scene, which is like the famous anime opening where Gold Roger is up on his execution platform and he's like, world fame power,
Get my
and
treasure.
in the crowd, in like later manga panels that Oda has created, like far into the like serialization of the manga, he's added like, oh, this character was here in like watching the execution and stuff, and you can see some of those characters in the crowd that they're like looking there, and the director has made references like, we know so much more now about the world than the anime did when they animated these scenes, and we can leverage that, and they actually care to leverage that. And so that's another thing that you like, if they were phoning it in, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't have a character that they would have to get like 10 seasons before this plot point could be relevant, and they're adding it in because it doesn't matter if they get that far. They just know that character was there, and that he should be there.
Sounds like the inverse of kind of what happened with Bebop, where like we're taking 1,000 episodes and like this rich wealth of lore, and we're going to condense it into an exquisite dish for you, hopefully, that is served up. Whereas Bebop, it felt like the creatives behind it were like, we're going to make a student film based on the 26 episodes that we saw, and we're going to inject our drama. Yeah, we're going to inject our drama into it on fast forward and make these characters be who we thought they probably were more likely. Like, I hated how Vicious was a clown for that entire show.
It almost feels like back when they, when like 4Kids was dubbing anime, and they were like, oh, well, we have to somehow make this understandable by an American crowd. So we're just going to completely rewrite this whole plot point or translate this as something clearly that it isn't in the name of making it more American. And that's like similar with, like the Death Note live action that, the creators of Death Note, like, gave it a thumbs up. They're like, yeah, it looks cool. We like it. But it was not an adaptation of like the anime or the manga. It was a reimagination of what an American story told through the tools of Death Note like would have been.
Yeah.
So it feels, really great that
Yeah.
One Piece is going to it looks camp.
Yeah.
It looks camp, and that's great because One
And it
Piece
owns
is
that.
so
Yeah,
camp.
so camp.
Yeah, and like I don't know if I want it to be. I don't want it to take itself like not seriously. It needs to be taken seriously because it has to sell itself like as like like legitimately like this is the world. But they also can't. It can't lose itself. Like
You can't have a crazy pirate clown
Yeah.
with powers where he can detach all of his bodies and swirl them about.
Mhm.
And he has a special move called the buggy ball.
Yeah.
You can't take that and not have some element of camp to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way to make that a dramatic point.
Yeah, but
and-
One Piece has a lot of dramatic moments to it and character moments and so it has to play that balance and that's why I'm excited because from what I'm seeing, it's not doing a disservice to either of those
Mhm.
elements.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm still keeping my eye. I'm so pessimistic at this point though.
Which
that-
is
We don't fault
Which
you.
is fair.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
not fault anybody. Again, I don't know that it'll be any good. I'm very nervous, but I'm hopeful.
I agree. This last trailer, finally, I was kind of like, okay, I'm like, okay, I can see, like, just the announcement. I'm like, that's gonna suck. They
Yeah.
don't get it. They won't get it. And the couple of teasers, I was like, nah, they're not getting it. But this last trailer, I agree. There was a lot in the background where I was like, okay, they don't need to do that. So somebody actually knows what they're doing. I hope. There was some of that with Cowboy Bebop too. So that's where I'm like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But One Piece deserves something because you talked about the 4 kids, and it mistreated One Piece more than 4 kids mistreated any other adaptation
Yeah.
by trying to make it more appropriate for children and remove some of its teeth in something that is, pretty doesn't necessarily take itself seriously. It does get to some really good emotional moments,
Yeah.
but Oda keeps it light a lot, like what we were talking about Venture Brothers. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of just fun and
It's a-
funniness, while then every once in a while it really gut punches
Yeah.
you.
It's a
Oh, yeah.
comedy adventure. So.
Yeah. So I do kind of still wonder. I'm just like, I don't know what the studios here think they're getting or gonna get. Like that's where the mistakes keep being.
Mhm.
There are live action adaptations in Japan of anime all the time, and a lot of them aren't particularly good. But they
No.
get the heart of whatever it is well
Yeah.
enough, and they don't
Yeah.
put a ton of budget into them or expectations out of them either. They're just to be done. But it feels like every time they try to bring it to the States, there's just this complete, like, we're embarrassed by the source material, and they try to scrap so much
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
And then they don't understand the, like, parts that are Japanese centric. Like, a lot of these are really built around Japanese mindsets and ideals and talking through and discussing those things, that if you sort of like remove them and put them in the States without trying to think through like, okay, now what is this? How does this
Yeah.
work? What does this mean? It kind of just gets, it's like, why are, that same thing with Death Note. I'm like the discussion of like how a society works, what justice is, how slow Japanese justice is to come, and the complications of their bureaucracy, but there's an importance to their bureaucracy. And it's like in America, it's like, oh no, like we have a whole different
Yeah.
set of
Yeah.
problems with our court system and our
Yeah.
it's like we don't need to get into, like, that's a different thing entirely. Why would you try to do that here? They keep talking about Akira, and that's one I'm always like, no, why? Like, it's so Japanese that I'm like, it makes no sense to try to change and adapt that to an American audience. But
Yeah.
maybe make it, I guess you could make it, but you have to do like, why? What is the goal of why this needs to be redone?
What are we
And that's
trying
the
to
thing
say
with
in the
Cowboy
same
Bebop
theme?
is
And-
like,
Yeah.
it was already
Yeah.
packaged. With One Piece, I could be like,
Well,
I
people,
want to bring some new fans
Yeah.
in
Exactly.
and show them what's
Totally.
good about this, so that they're willing to take the plunge on something that has so many volumes
Yeah.
and so many episodes
Yeah.
to potentially go hit. And by the way, reading through it, you can read through it in no time at all. It seems scary by the volumes, but you can read manga really fast if you
Yeah.
want to catch up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if it's like, if they really do, is just like, we want to get some people into this
hmm
and give them enough of a bite and have a good time that they kind of want some more, but don't try to like oh, this is going to be
funny.
it, and we're going to get it perfect, or we're going to completely change this for an American audience, like that's going to be a bad time.
I think the people who like One Piece for the adventure are going to eat well with the adaptation. But the people who
Hopefully.
like One Piece because they've got funny faces, or you see,
They
just
wanna
funny
see
things.
these-
It's not you're not
yeah.
gonna get it just because that's the one part of anime that doesn't transfer over to live action is that you can't make the funny anime face. You can't sweat drop, because it doesn't work that way.
Your head can't turn into fire. And it doesn't really.
Yeah. So
Well, Jimmy, would you recommend One Piece, the original, the actual anime and the manga, since you can't recommend the new thing that's coming out?
Wholeheartedly. I mean, there are plenty of people who will try it and not like it, but it's my favorite for a reason. So I can't not recommend something like that,
Yeah. I've never seen it. So
really?
Yeah. So I will take that recommend to heart. And
Yeah.
I'll start at episode 1, Jimmy.
You should.
I'll just
Yeah.
go right from.
I recently
It's a long series, like Brian said. There's no shame in reading the manga. In fact, it's better in a lot of regards. I'm so into the sunk cost of the anime that that's my option, and it's my grave that I've dug. But there's the anime is a worse product because it has a lot of like pacing issues and that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have merit either. And it's still really good.
I'm sure there's like recommended guides too for somebody like me who wants to
like
get into it. That's
Yeah.
like, here's the episodes that are filler.
Yeah.
That's what Blue's been doing for me because I haven't watched like the only thing I've watched was like the original 4Kids adaptation, and then like that was decades ago. And so we've been watching through, and we just got to a part where he's like, all right, we're just gonna skip the next like 8 episodes because that's filler and bullshit, and we're just gonna continue on. So
nice.
You mentioned Inuyasha a while back, and that's if you don't watch that with a guy that says skip these 30 episodes, you're gonna be in for a bad time.
So much time.
I watched.
Do you want to talk about
a
a show that needed to get its own season 8 Adventure Brothers movie and that left people waiting? Let's talk about Inuyasha and how you had to wait like decades to get the last season of anime.
I gave up on that show after they got the jewel the first time and it shattered again.
And then it shattered
I was
again.
like, I'm fucking done. Like, I just don't.
It's their one MacGuffin. They need it.
It's like, get a different MacGuffin. Why can't there be 2 jewels?
Well, there are 2 jewels in addition to 998 other parts.
I do think One Piece is interesting for as long as it has run, how much it's had to change and adapt.
Yeah.
So as an animated show, it started in a time where you ran continuously, which is why you ended up with bizarre episodes of Inuyasha or whole sidelines that have nothing. You can watch. There's one part in Inuyasha where you can like watch an episode and literally skip like 14. And you watch the next one, and it picks up as if nothing happened.
Yep.
Like they're like, we need to head east, and then you turn off 14 episodes, and you pick it up, and it's like, all right,
we're
on
heading
to the east we go. And it's like nothing happened.
It's the same thing with One Piece.
Yeah, there's a lot of pacing in early One Piece where it's like you could tell they kind of hit and they caught up, but it's gotten better. But as of late, like way more shows now go to seasonality like American shows do and kind of know like, okay, we're going to get this in a season.
With the exception of One Piece, which is still going.
It still goes on like every week and then
still
takes
goes
little
on.
breaks. Yeah, I think there's
But it still has a lot to get to because the comics have also kind of continuously gone on.
Oda does not
stop.
Yeah, he is the hardest working person maybe alive.
If you want to see a man who's possessed by like the spirit of art, like it's Oda. He has these scheduled timetables where it's like, you see like the jokes about like, oh, what time is it? And it's like the same word on every single part of the clock. For Oda, it's like drawing One Piece time for every single hour.
Yeah.
And like he takes like a scheduled break like once every 2 weeks or something, like for a day, and then he goes back to it. It's like literally like watching like a Gesamtkunstwerk like being made in front of our eyes, where it's like this is literally something that will need to go into a museum at some point.
He's like a portal to another world that keeps funneling out things.
Yeah. It's like, what's going on, dude? Yeah. He's possessed by something, and we don't want him to not be possessed. Maybe it's by artistic bees.
Yeah.
But
I'd love to see him and Miyazaki in a room talking. But I know
that's interesting considering that Miyazaki hates anime.
Yeah, I know that they would both be like, well, fuck you too. It'd be like we should both be drawing somewhere.
Yeah, right.
That would be a cool team up.
That would be a cool team up. But who would do the story and who would do the art?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd rather have Miyazaki do the art personally, and I'd like Oda's do the story.
Yeah. Well, cool. So that makes it a refute at the top for Terry Gilliam's Teenage Kraken. What is it called again? I can't remember.
Ruby Gillman,
Ruby
Gillman, Teenage Kraken,
okay,
TM.
I gotcha. Yes, a refute for that one, please. There's a recommend for Nimona.
Yep.
Based on
the first 75% of Nimona.
There you go. Well, once you're in at 75%, you might as well.
Yeah, you might as well.
Put it on double speed, and then you'll save yourself some time.
So, a surprise to myself recommend for The Bees, 1978's The Bees with John Saxon. You gotta love him. If you don't know him, then you gotta know him, and then you love him. And then we've got a recommend or refute from the future that we don't yet know. We're still divinating on it, and we'll come back and let you know what Jimmy's thoughts are when One Piece comes out on Netflix.
We need
live
some
action.
Astrology.
Yeah.
If only we had the astrologer.
If only we could predict with astrology how it would be. I'm sure it'll gross 145 million at the very least.
That's like 5 million under what they paid for. So
there you go. Yeah, and we have a recommend from Jimmy for the original One Piece, not the 4Kids one. Please don't do that to yourself.
For a laugh.
If you want to do it for a laugh after.
No, I wouldn't even do it for a laugh. Watch the opening, the Yayo Yayo.
Yo!
Don't give it up, Luffy. Don't give it up, Solo. Don't give it up, Nami.
Yayo,
Turn on the Funimation dub.
And the manga as well. Let's throw it in there, right?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Hard recommend on the manga.
There you go. Well, that's awesome. That is it for us here. That's it for Recommend or Refute from Afterthoughts. I've been your host, John Garcia. With me is our lovely guests again, Jimmy and Erika. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. I'll see you next week where I go on a long tirade about the Rose of Versailles and why everyone should watch that one.
We need a split. We need to split off. This is now, I want a splinter anime podcast.
I knew you'd want to do this. I get my trash podcast if you get your anime podcast.
We can do the anime podcast.
Yes.
I like the weird ones.
We're just going with
the Anime Thoughts, THOTS.
Yeah, there you go. And then our co-host.
Yeah, Ryan King. The future of One Piece is left out there for anyone to find on Netflix in one place.
You want my treasure? Place. You can stream it now on Netflix.
Oh my God.
Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.